What's going on, Crunchit family? Today we have a special guest. His name is Frank Levy. He has a wealth of knowledge in this industry. Fun fact about him is he actually didn't start off in the auto body industry. He was a programmer or a completely different industry. Today we're going to dive into the lessons he's learned and the insights he has from working with multiple different shops on the back end side of it. So your perfect financials, making sure everything's integrated with CCC1 properly. So Frank, before we dive in, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came about in this industry.
Well, my background is in programming and system integration, project management. And when I relocated out to California, it was during a recession. So I got a job working for two body shops and three car dealerships. And I was helping out the IT guy across those facilities. And so as they were changing from a EDS system at the service centers, they wanted to change the collision centers that they had over to CCC. So I got a call and say, hey, can you come in and install CCC and QuickBooks? And I'm like, sure. So I was transferred over to the collision centers, worked on those installs and started taking on additional responsibilities in there. Besides the software, I was doing the hardware
Mhm.
already. So then the phone systems and then the compliance for safety, injury, and illness. And just as things were popping up, because typically a body shop doesn't have a lot of back end operational support, I was taking on any role that popped up,
Mm,
not customer facing.
right.
And so I just grew from there.
Is that kind of what led you to mastering like CCC and the QuickBook integration?
Yes, my background was in programming and developing those types of systems for, previous jobs. So it kind of fit into my experience.
Hmm.
So it's pretty easy for me to pick up that, a part is a part, whether it's, a bottle of liquor, whether it's, you know, a window covering, or an auto part. It has a part, it needs to go into the financial system. You need to allocate, the sales, the cost of goods sold,
Hmm.
the expenses, so it all kind of fit together for me.
Right. Just made sense. And what do you think shops can expect when they have their CCC and chart accounts synced properly? Like, do they get better financials? What do they expect when they have it done right?
Well, they have more accurate financials. And, there's an old saying, you can't manage what you can't measure.
That's true.
So,
That's very true.
the financials gives you one point of measurement. It's not the only point, but it is a key point, that shops need to look at their P&L, their balance sheet are the two key ones, to see how the business is running, integration with um, banks, for additional, um, money. If they want to sell their business, they need to know the value of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that kind of leads into the next question, like how does looking at understanding your P&L and your balance sheet lead into operational decision making and planning for the future of the business, knowing it's
Well,
accurate?
in the auto body shops, there's four key revenue streams that you want to look at. You have the labor, you have your parts, you have your materials, and you have your sublet, which is third party labor. So understanding where the profitability is coming from and what that profitability is can help you direct where you need to focus your attention to.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So then you can kind of look into your shop and say, hey, I'm struggling in these areas. I need to put more attention here, or I need to cut expenses here.
Correct.
Okay.
There's a lot
Um,
more you can do based on that information,
mhm.
such as, there's certain key performance indicators um, that you're going to have. There's sort of national averages, and then depending on your particular location and your particular focus, you can adjust those indicators. And then as you measure it and produce those reports and trending analysis on it, you can see how you're doing against your goals. And then what
Okay.
goals that you want to set, and are you achieving them? What type of changes do you need to make
Mhm. Yeah.
in order to achieve those goals?
Right. So what tips would you recommend to other shop owners that would help them on this journey to getting those perfect financials and being able to read their charts and make those business decisions for them to grow and succeed?
Well, I always suggest to people that are kind of new into it to try and keep it as simple as possible. You know, what are their key objectives, and to build those financials around those key objectives and what they want to look at. Don't try and look at everything and get so detailed that you get lost in the weeds.
Right.
You can always drill down, but if you don't have those, um, basics
Mhm.
covered, you don't know where to go. You don't know where to ask for help.
Do
And
you?
things that, I always believe in is I don't know, every answer to every question,
Mhm.
but I do know where to go to ask those questions and to find out what the answers are.
Right. Do you have any examples of maybe previous shops you've worked with where you kind of see them getting lost in the weeds? That's pretty common.
Yes. Yeah. It's usually within some of the monthly applications uh,
Hmm.
or monthly adjustments that they want to make into it. They don't have a good breakout of those key components, whether, in their sales. They want to
Okay.
focus on the labor, the parts, the materials. So understanding where the information comes from and and simplifying that process, for them, because you have to remember a lot of these shop owners came from being a technician, came from being a painter, came from being a estimator. So
Hmm.
they never had to deal with that back end of the system of reporting. So it
Right.
takes a little time. They can dismantle a car, they can paint a car great, but understanding what they're doing in CCC and then how it affects their financials is that learning curve that they're going through.
Right.
And so I always suggest, take your time. Let's take it one step at a time. Make sure you understand what you're doing in the front end, how it affects your back end. And once they get that, they can see about what changes they want to make and what their possible outcomes are. And then it's always to remember there's never best, only better.
Right.
So they keep attacking that. And it's also important to, when you do make a change and it is successful, that you want to also maintain that
Mm.
change going forward. And sometimes that's a little extra, sometimes that's a little extra work on
Right.
people's part. And they start out great, and then all of a sudden it kind of falls by the wayside and they start going back to what they know
Hmm.
instead of what you're trying to teach them. So it's
Right.
important to give them that support and understanding of what they're doing and the effect on the business.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, and just being open to take that change and actually apply it every single time so you
Correct.
keep on growing.
If they
Well,
don't know how that change that they're doing is going to affect the back end, they only have one part of the
right.
equation. And so I always try and teach, whether it's that business owner or the people doing the work, why they're doing it and how it affects.
Hmm.
So this way, when they come with the variation on that, they know more what to do because
Right.
they know the effect of it,
They get the
as
whole
opposed,
picture.
Correct. You just don't want them doing data entry. You want
Hmm.
them to make, valid business decisions on what's going to happen if I do this, what's going to happen if I do that.
Right.
The more they understand that, the better they are and the more effective that they are.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. Well, Frank, I really appreciate you taking the time today to answer some of these questions and do this interview. It means a ton.
No problem.
Thanks again, Frank, for taking the time out of your day. We really appreciate it. Now I'm going to dive into a little recap of what Frank just talked about. So the first thing is how understanding your P&L gives you better insight on decision making for your shop. So what he was saying was when you know your numbers, when you know your profit and loss statement, you can decide, hey, I need to cut expenses here or I need to add more energy here and keep making those decisions so your business stays profitable. The next thing he talked about is tips on getting your body shop to perfect financials. And one of the main tips he said is just keep it simple, right? There's no need to get overcomplicated with things. Just keep it really simple and basic. Something he said that stuck out to me is there is never best, only better. Meaning there is never one best way to do anything. There's only a better way to do it. And to keep that better way, you have to keep up with your financials on a weekly, monthly basis. And the last thing he talked about is what you can expect when your financials are done right. You can't manage what you can't measure. That's what he said. And I'm sure you can all relate while working on a car. If you can't measure what you're doing with your progress, you're not going to be able to manage what's next and what are the next steps. So these are great things Frank talked about. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. My email's down below. We do free consultations. Don't forget to like and subscribe.